Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's lecture on Chicana feminist thought. The articles for this week give us a glimpse at a couple of organizations that existed during the time and how women participated in these organizations. And the last reading, we finally see how Chicana lesbians related to the events of this time period. So the first reading talked about the Chicana Service Action Center, which was a result of a Chicana workshop of the Mexican American Issues Conference from 1970. This center sought to create employment programs and later added leadership development programs to its roster. It also established better women's shelter. And so it was active for quite a number of years, providing services to women, particularly in the Los Angeles area. As I was looking for more recent information about the Chicano Service Action Center, I unfortunately found that the leadership is currently under investigation for embezzling funds from the center. So this is a very sad and disturbing ending to this center that was one of the major results of Chicana feminism from the 1970s. A couple of the other articles focused on La Raza Unida Party, which was created by Jose Angel Gutierrez, who had a career as an activist, organizing in Texas, organizing youth through student organizations, and later organizing politically as well. The party came about from an incident in the town of Crystal City, Texas, where the majority of the population was Mexican American, but the political positions in the town were all held by Anglos. And so this tension was made apparent during a student protest in one of the local high schools, where students went on a strike because the Mexican American students would not be allowed to participate in popular extracurricular activities. And so the students got fed up and walked out, and the community supported them. And so this created an opportunity to create an organization. And there had already been discussions within the Chicano movement about creating a third party. There had been this sense that the Republican or the Democratic Party was really representing the needs of the Chicano community at this time. And so it was the right moment to begin La Raza Unida Party, which became this third party. It had the most influence in Crystal City in the 1970s, where they were able to win a number of local government positions. But once the next term came around, they had lost momentum and lost some of the seats back to the Anglo population. They were able, though, to successfully run quite a number of candidates for state and local political positions throughout the Southwest between 1970 and 1974. And as we saw in one of the readings, a number of those candidates were women. So we saw, though, some differences depending on where the party chapter was and how each one addressed women's issues. So in the Northern California Raza Unida Party, we saw their discussion of women's issues in their party platform and the various issues that they addressed. They recognized the triple oppression of Chicanas. They discussed the inclusion of women in party decisions and throughout the infrastructure of the party. They called for equality between men and women inside the party and at home. They called for the creation of childcare centers and advocated for equality in work pay and better job opportunities for Chicanas. They talked about community-controlled birth control, and also that the party should be involved in advocating for various educational opportunities for Chicanas. So we see that in Northern California, the party was really representing a lot of the women's issues that we've seen women talk about in previous readings. In the Texas party, however, we see a different approach to dealing with women's issues. They stated that Chicanas did not have the quote unquote luxury of dealing with women's issues exclusively. Claims in their platform for equal pay, equal educational rights, and legal rights is the same as the mainstream women's movement. So they sort of argue that they were already fighting for these issues, for these rights, rights that were for both men and women. And so there wasn't really a need for Chicanas to organize separately as women. They focus on emphasizing the inclusion of women as candidates for their political campaigns, and that's where we really see the impact of Chicanas in La Raza Unida party in Texas. But this quote, I think, really encapsulates sort of the philosophy of the party in Texas. La Raza Unida party does not feel that a separate stand on the rights of women is necessary, as it is explicit that women are included in the fight for equal rights. The Raza Unida party believes that the strength of unity begins with the family. So once again, we see sort of the split between those that believe that there is a reason for Chicanas and Chicana women's issues to be addressed separately and exclusively, and others that feel that the women's issues are already incorporated within the larger Chicano movement agenda, and that the focus should be on the family and developing the family. The last reading, finally, we see the voices of Chicana lesbians coming into play, and how they saw themselves within the larger Chicano movement that is going on during this time period. And so in this article, the author talks about the ways in which Chicana lesbians threaten and contribute to Chicana women's issues within the Chicana movement. For instance, they pose a threat to the masculinity of the Chicano movement because men can't manipulate them through their sexuality. They're not interested in men. And so that kind of dynamic of making women compete with each other for the attentions of Chicano men within the movement is just not present there for these women. They challenge the taboos around sex and sexuality, but actually talking about it. They also challenge the internalization of hating our own bodies. And they also challenge the identification of women with their relationships to men. The image here is of the author of this collection, from where this piece comes from, Carla Trujillo. The image there is actually the cover of the book when it first came out. And so she talks about some of the other cultural areas that Chicana lesbians challenge, and where they're also excluded in some ways. So the reading talked about motherhood and how Chicana lesbians who have children challenge the heterosexual notion that motherhood can only take place with a man present. As when they choose to become a mother through alternative methods like adoptions and so on, they are perceived as a failure by the Chicano community because they're not fulfilling their sort of traditional role of being a mother that is so prevalent in defining the role of women in this community. They also threaten religious definitions of family and women's roles. And so are perceived as a threat by Catholicism, where they often have to figure out a balance between their religious doctrines and personal lifestyle, because religion, and particularly Catholicism, is a cultural element in many Chicano communities. And so Chicano lesbians are often finding themselves caught between choosing how much of Catholicism to remain a part of, if at all, and at the same time being accepting of their own personal lives and lifestyles. And this is often a challenge for these women, especially when Catholicism is seen as part of Chicano culture. At the end of the article, she talks about unity among all women, all Chicana women, whether they're lesbians or not, identifying their commonalities, where all women are subservient and hold a subservient position in society. All of these women, regardless of their sexuality, experience a threat of violence against their bodies. And all of these women are subjected to the dichotomy of the good girl versus the bad girl, right? This is a binary that many Chicana women have to navigate. And finally, she talks about the common experience and impact of poverty. So if these are all sort of common experiences that Chicana women have, whether lesbians or not, they are essentially saying we should not allow divisions, right, to be created between us, because there are all these things that we do experience as women, regardless of our sexuality. And so here ends the lecture for this week. I look forward to seeing your thoughts in the discussion post, and also your thoughts on the video that I posted. I'll see you all next week.